Well, it's Friday afternoon, and I'm here in Florida in Hallandale Beach here, having a pretty awesome time. The last week has been really, really fantastic. Met some serious Israel friends who are partnering up with Standing Together and really pushing our project forward to let the soldiers in Israel know that they have a huge backing from overseas and people who truly, truly love and support them. I want to show them support in amazing ways. So Rafael is in the house. How you doing, Rafael? Good to see you here. Let's just invite some people going on here. All right, people are coming in, and I just want to ask everyone who's out there, please do me a favor and invite your friends. Share the video. Invite your friends right now so we can get some more people on here. And we're going to start talking about this week's Parsha, which really gives a strong insight in terms of what it means to be religious and specifically Jewish. What does it mean to believe in God, and especially in the Jewish sense of the word? And the funny thing is that many people have the wrong, I think, I don't know if I have the right idea, but I think that this week's Parsha gives us a little insight in terms of what we should be doing, what we should be aiming for, and what the secret is to becoming or behaving in a religious way, at least in terms of Judaism. All right, let's see who's here. Deborah is here. David Fast, good Shabbos. Michael Miller is here. Adam is here. How are you? Danny Summer is here. Mexico City. How you doing? Shannon is here. Mike is here. All right. So this week's parsha is very, very interesting. We're a week after Har Sinai. We're a week after the national revelation where God really showed him or sounded himself towards the nation of Israel. And there's really no doubts about, Bnei Israel's right now, their belief in God. There's no question. They don't have any, really no doubts. And you'd expect the week after we have this amazing revelation, this amazing experience, heavenly experience, and this spiritual experience, which was never experienced before that time and will never be experienced after that time. Until maybe the Mashiach. But the point is that there's no other nation in the world that has this story of national revelation, right? Every other religion in the world is started by, the prophet came to us and told us A, B, C, D, and we have to believe the prophet. It's only the Jewish religion that says the whole nation saw actually on the splitting of the sea, as well as heard God. So the question is, the week after that happens, right? The week after that happens, what would we say? What would we think the Torah would be discussing? You would think maybe, talk about Shabbat, talk about Yom Kippur, talk about the holiest of days, talk about the things between God and man, talk about, korbanot, sacrifices, talk about, things that are very spiritual, very, very up in the sky, things that have nothing to do with this world per se, because this world, we're here all the time, and civil courts we have, and, basic morality we have, let's say. And people say we don't really need God to tell us, thou shalt not steal, right? So before I continue, I just want to let everyone know two things. Number one, I'm here in Florida for Shabbat. If you are around, well, the question is where I'm going to be. That's the question for Shabbat. I'm supposed to be in Bell Harbor. We are not sure if that's going to happen yet. I know it's crazy, but what can I tell you? A little bit disappointed, but we'll see what happens. If not in Bell Harbor, I might be in Boca, unless something else comes up, but we'll see. In any case, I do want to put this down. I'm asking everyone before I go on, 1 second. I'm putting this in right now. Paste. Okay. When I get off, when I finish this little parsha, I'm asking everyone, okay? There is the link for Mishloach Manot. We are still behind a couple of thousand Mishloach Manot. They're $18 a piece. And I really, really need everyone's help with this. Not a joke, all right? And I want to get to as many soldiers as we can. So please, everyone, do what you can, share the video, and hit that link when I'm done. Okay, so we would expect that after the story of Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, that we would have very holy and, really spiritual things that we cannot understand in this world. And the Parsha starts out, these are the laws that you should place before them. If you buy a Hebrew slave servant, then he should work for you for 6 years, and the 7th year go free. Number one, that is the first law that we need after Mount Sinai. That is the first thing that the God is to worry about, telling us about if you buy an Eved Ivri, Now, just to let everyone know, the rules of Eved Ivri, we call them slaves today. They're not slaves. They're servants, not even servants. We call them house helpers. But the rules are not like we know people call slaves today. In terms of Judaism, if you hit a slave, they're set free immediately. You're not allowed to injure them. You're not allowed to do anything to them. So it's not what we know today when we say the word slave. It's more a house helper or worker. But the reason that a person gets put into slavery is because they stole money and they cannot pay it back, and therefore they're paying off their debt by working for the person who they stole from. So it's not under the impression of what we know of today of slaves, and that's exactly the point that I want to talk about, our impressions. I've said it weeks ago, and I'll say it again. All of us want to be good people. All humans want to be good people. No one says, I want to be a bad person. Even the worst and the most evil person in the world. Right? Hitler did not say, I want to kill, and I want to murder, and I want to gas people. He said, I want to save the world, and he tried to convince the world that Jews are cancer. So the problem with that is, it's very nice, but the problem is that anybody can justify any action. And so the question is, we don't have a base that's not subjective, that is not objective, rather. If we don't have a base that's not objective, well, we don't really know if our actions are good or bad. And it's a little strange that after, Mount Sinai, you're giving the Torah, and we're talking about dealing, interpersonal human relations in terms of if you have a worker that you have to, whatever he comes in, you have to give him when he goes out. And if he's a wife and children, then the wife and children go out with him. And then if he doesn't want to go out, so the Torah says you bring the servant, the worker, to the door, and you make a hole in his ear, and I'll explain that in a second why that is. And he stays to you till Yovel. He stays to the 49th year, and then is left free again. And then it goes on. It says, someone who sends his daughter out to work to make some money. The same thing. It's going on. And then it says, someone who murders someone should be killed by courts, the death penalty according to Judaism. But again, not today. It has to be in the Great Sanhedrin. And then if we go on, it says someone who strikes his parents has a death penalty, again, by the high courts, not today. They're going to have Ishu Machrov and Tzabi Adom Motimat, right? It's someone who kidnaps someone who curses the parents, someone who gets into a fight. And it just goes on with like civil courts here. If two people are fighting and one person hits the other person and they fall on a woman and the woman loses her baby, again, this is all civil action, civil courts. And the question is this what we need after Har Sinai? I mean, come on, give us spirituality, give us, Yom Kippur, give us, how to work the Beit HaMikdash, Truma, talk about the Mishkan being built, talk about, prophecy. We're talking about low, judicial systems. It's really strange here. If we go on, you're talking about an animal that does damage to the neighbor's field, or to a human being. The laws of if it does once, twice, you pay it out, and the third time you have to kill the animal because it's a dangerous animal. And if we go on, if you dig a pit in your field and someone falls in, you'll be responsible. Again, these are things that one would think is obvious to anyone living in, Western normal society. Let's call it Western normal society, right? So what is the place? I'm just inviting some more people in. What is the place? And again, anyone who's on there, do me a favor, if you don't mind, share it and invite some people in here. What is the place for all these civil judicial rules the week after Har Sinai? What's the message here? Again, you would think that it would talk about the holiest of holies, right? Talk about the measurement of the holiest of holies in the Temple Mount. Talk about, talk about the sacrifices. Talk about Shabbat. Talk about Yom Kippur. Talk about, things between God and man. Between man and man, we could be expected, in other words, even before the Torah was given, so man had a responsibility to be kind to each other. Man had a responsibility to not to kill and not to steal. That was already from the 7 commandments of Noah, which the whole world, by the way, is commanded to keep. It's the 7 commandments of Noah. And again, I was actually in Texas, in Lubbock, a couple of days ago, and there's a huge community of Noahites there. It's really amazing to see. It really, really is. So what is the message about these, unimportant, quote-unquote, laws that are being brought right after the amazing spiritual experience about Har Sinai? And I think the message is clear. You see, a lot of us believe that God is about, getting to the wall and putting our hands up and, praise Allah, and screaming and, feeling that is spiritual uplifting, even in prayer, and having those, sparks of spirituality. And while those are very important, very nice, that is not what it's about. I said that last week. And it's not about screaming, and it's not about, doing the heavy, big acts. There's a famous story about 2 people who came to a rabbi. And they both said, Rabbi, we did the horrible. One guy says, Rabbi, I did the most horrible thing in my life, and I don't know how to do repentance. I don't know how to do tshuva. And the rabbi says, well, go to my garden and pick up the biggest boulder you can possibly pick up from my garden and bring it in my living room. So the guy goes out to his garden, picks up a huge rock, picks it up, and he's walking, he can't, and he puts it down in the rabbi's rabbi's living room. And then comes another guy and he says, Rabbi, I'm not such a bad guy. I haven't done anything horrible. But, here and there, like every human, we sin, right? So I've done a couple of little things, but, I don't even feel I don't know what to do about it. So the rabbi says, go to my garden, pick up 1,000 smallest pebbles you can possibly pick up and bring them inside. So he does it. They're both standing in front of him. He says, all right, gentlemen, so which one of you feel horrible? And the one with the big rock says, listen, that was, I couldn't, my back is killing me. And the one with the small rocks, he's got in a couple of bags, brings it in, no problem. The rabbi says, I want you now both to go back out to the garden and put the rocks back exactly where you took them from. Well, the one with the big rock is no problem. He picks it up, goes out. There's a big ditch in the floor where he took the rock up, and he places it down exactly where he took it from. And he comes inside. The one with the small rock says, Rabbi, how am I supposed to do that? They're tiny pebbles. They left no impression. And the rabbi says, you have now understood what repentance is all about. When you feel the pain of something that you did wrong, it's easy to correct it. But when you justify things, and it's just little things, Rabbi, no big deal, that is where it's difficult to do repentance because you don't feel the actual pain of what you did wrong. And I think that is exactly the message of this week's Parsha. The idea is that, Ben Adam, between God and man, Ben Adam, Makom, between God and man is very, very important, of course, right? But if you don't have Ben Adam Lechavero, if you don't have between people, then you definitely can't have between God. And the sentence that my grandfather used to say is menschlichkeit before Yiddishkeit. You got to be a mensch before you can be a Yid, before you can be a Jew. And it's not before, it goes together. But it says derech eretz kadma Torah, that derech eretz, being kind to people, is comes before Torah. And again, it's not that you can cancel out Torah, but you cannot be a religious Jew without being kind. And I'll just finish off that thought with one other thing. In the Shemona Esrei in the mornings, we say every morning in the first three brachot, the first three blessings of Shemona Esrei, that it starts out the bracha Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov, right? The God of Avram, the God of Yitzchak, and the God of Jacob. And at the end, it ended up only Magen Avraham. May God keep Avraham protected. And the questions are asked: why does it only leave Avraham? Why doesn't it finish off with protect Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? It starts the bracha off with the three fathers. Finish it off with the three fathers. And the answer that I heard from Abba Drahum, I think my father told this to me, is that the first three brachot, the first three mention of the names are talking about traits that the Avram, Yitzchak, and had that we have to do, right? Avram had chesed, kindness. Yitzchak had gvura. He was very strong with his religion. He was able to, Yitzchak, by the sacrifice of Yitzchak, so it says Yitzchak was 30-somewhat years old, and he didn't move his neck. He wanted to allow, in other words, he took over his own desires and comforts and put it aside. And that's gevura, that's strength. Gevura is not about a muscle. It's about ezu gibor kovesh titzro. Who's the mighty person, the one who takes over his own inclinations and his own comforts in order to keep the Torah. And three is Jacob is truth. And again, that's very cutthroat. It's very I got the truth. That's it. So why doesn't the blessing end off with Magen Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? Why does it only end off with Magen Avraham? Only protect Abraham. And my father said that Abraham has the period at the end of the sentence. In other words, Abraham's chesed, Abraham's kindness. The other two traits are extremely important. You cannot be a good Jew without them either. However, if you don't have that period at the end of the sentence, you don't got it. And that's why the first bracha ends up with Magen Avraham, only with Avraham and not the other two. Because at the end of the sentence, you have to have all three, but if you don't have kindness, then the other two cannot exist. And what's interesting here, I think the message is quite clear in this week's parsha, that the whole first six aliyahs, the whole first five aliyahs are talking, five portions are talking in the parsha, are talking about judicial law, are talking about relations between neighbors and between friends and between family and what you can't do and when you can do. And that is exactly the point. The Torah, of course, is in Yom Kippur, and of course is with the Beit HaMikdash when the sacrifices are being given. Of course it's there. But in our daily lives, it's every day, every second, right? If Yom Kippur is once a year, right? Once a year is the holiest day of the year, that's true. But that's not where it is. It's in the daily grind. It's how you do business. It's how you talk to people. It's how you meet, anything you do, how you eat, how you breathe, how you wake up in the morning. That's where the grind is. That's where Judaism is. If people get stuck with all the Ben Adam and Makom between man and God, and they're always on a spiritual high, but they can't relate to people, that's not where it is. I was once on a plane, and people were getting up to pray on the plane, and I got a psak halacha. I got a ruling from Eric. How are you? What's going on? I got to call you. In any case, I got a ruling from a rabbi. He said you shouldn't get up on the plane to daven because you wake up people. So I was sitting down, and there were 10 people in the front, or 9 people, and they were screaming out that I'm number 10. I have to come help them, fulfill a 10-person minyan. And I said, no, the people are waking up. I'm not doing this. And they got very upset, and they screamed at me. And the woman next to me was, I don't know if she was even Jewish. And she said to me, how do you explain that? Religious people waking people up. I said, do you want me to explain it to you? I'll explain it to you. There are 2 parts of Judaism. One is learning. You got to know the law. But the other one is bringing it into your heart. Bring it into your heart. People learn, but they don't bring it into their hearts. And that's what's going on here. They're worrying about davening, praying out loud, but they're not worrying about the next person in front of them who they're waking up. That is not Judaism. I'm not saying I disagree with them. That's not Judaism. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to wake someone up. And you can daven in your seat. So I think that the message here in this week's parsha is very clear that, while Har Sinai was a blast of spirituality, at the end of the day, it's the grind, the daily grind, how you treat each other. That's how you do it. Again, like I said, if you're a businessman, how you do business. If you're a woman, if you're a lawyer, how you deal in your lawyers. If you're a doctor, everything is where God is found. And what's interesting, then it goes on into the laws of Shemitah. The laws of Shemitah have to do with Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. You have to let the land rest for 7 days. And you got to think, what does this have to do with that? What does Shemitah, letting the land rest, have to do with all these judicial laws? And then it goes on about how to treat your animals, and then it goes on to the 3 famous holidays, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, and switches over completely to between man and God. And you would think that would go first, and the answer is no. That exists. That exists. How you treat man is up to us, is up to each individual. And of course, then at the end it talks about the land of Israel, whether we will be able to stay in the land of Israel. And I think that this, Parshat Mishpatim is very, very clear on this issue. And one doesn't negate the other. It's not that you'd be a very nice person and not, not keep the Torah. They have to go together. But at the end of the day, in Parshat Mishpatim, the Ben Adam L'Chaveiro comes first. The interpersonal relations between human beings come first. And the lowest of the low, quote unquote, people call it the lowest. It's not the lowest of the low. Eved Ivri, having a maidservant at home, that's where it is. The idea that you have one pillow at home, you have to give it to your maidservant. That's where God is. That's where God is. It's not, if you're machmir on everything, and you can be stringent on whatever you want, and that's very good and great. Actually, the Talmud says that kocheter adifa, it's better to be makil, except in certain areas, but that's totally irrelevant right now. But the point is that you can be as machmir as you want, but if you don't have the interpersonal relations, you're not kind to people, you don't have the whole first part of this parsha, you're missing it. I once asked my students, if God gave you 2 choices, which he doesn't, but if these 2 choices, he said you can either have a child who is very, very stringent on everything. He keeps, Shabbos keeps till late. He eats kosher. That's so machmir, and he doesn't walk. Everything's machmir. He closes his eyes when he walks in the streets. All kinds of chumras, all kinds of stringencies, but he's just missing basic human relations. Please, thank you, leaving it to open the door, holding the door open for someone, acting in a nice way, or second, be a very, very nice person, but will not keep Shabbos, will not keep Yom Kippur, will not keep, kosher and anything else. Which one would you choose? Now again, they don't have to be separate, they're together, right? I'm giving you a hypothetical situation. And a lot of the people said, I'd rather have the person who's very, very stringent about everything, and I said, well, I disagree. I would rather, if God gave me that choice, which he doesn't, can we do both? But if that was the choice, then I would say, I want the person who's nice. Because if the person's not keeping Shabbat, if the person's not keeping Yom Kippur, if the person's not keeping the holidays, not keeping kosher, it's lack of understanding. In other words, if you come spend the Shabbat at the house, if your children have a Shabbat at your house and you keep the Shabbat and are very happy, they'll enjoy it. They'll actually want to keep it. But if they're not being nice to people, there's nothing to talk about. That there's something's missing on a basic level. I can teach someone how to keep Shabbat. Say please and thank you. That's really basic stuff that they're missing. So that's with that. At the end of the day, at the end of the parsha, there's something that I just want to mention. It talks about coming to Eretz Yisrael, and there's a pasuk that I do like reading here, and I want to talk about this for 2 minutes, and then we're going to be finishing up. It talks about us coming into Eretz Yisrael and fighting the wars against those who live here. And it says the following: I will not kick the enemies out in one time. Pen tiyeh haaretz shlama lest the land be empty. And then the wild animals will come on the land. God says, I will get the enemies out slowly until you come and redeem the land and settle the land. Settle, right? And then it says, I will make your borders from Yam Suf ad Yam Plishtim, from the desert to the sea. And I will give you in control of the people of the land, and you should kick them out. You shall not make a treaty with them or with their gods. They should not settle on your land, lest they cause you to sin. They will cause you, Mokesh in Hebrew only means a mine. There will be a minefield. They will cause you downfall. Now, in terms of Jewish law, this doesn't mean that you have to kick out all non-Jewish inhabitants in the land of Israel. Absolutely not. It's talking about inhabitants who did not keep the 7 commandments of Noach. And again, those commandments are real human, talking about no kill, no adultery, and things like that. Not anything. It's all in one God. They believe in one God. If they believe in God, it's one God. Not idol worship. But it's not talking about kicking out all inhabitants. It's talking about people who are missing the basics of morality. And peace in terms of Judaism is a very important thing. We say it 3 times a day. We say it in davening, we say it in benching, when we create grace after meals. Peace is a very important thing, but peace is not defined by what we think peace is. Peace is defined by what real peace is. And if someone is missing the basics of morality, you should not make a deal with them. And it says here that if you do, they will be with you as a downfall, and will catch again like a mine explosion. And I think this is very clear here. I don't think there's anyone who wants peace more than people who live in Israel. Certainly people who serve in the IDF, or people who have lost friends in the IDF, and certainly those who lost family in the IDF. There's no one who wants peace more than them. But again, the definition of peace is a problem. Shalom, shalom, ve'en shalom, it says in the prophet, peace, peace, but there is no peace. Calling something peace doesn't make it peace. Peace is about truth. Emet v'shalom ya'avu, right? They have to go together. Truth and peace have to go together. If you don't have truth, you don't have peace. And so when it comes to the inhabitants of Israel, and today included, the Torah is not an ancient book for back then, it's for all eternity. It's very simple. The basic morality must be kept. You cannot encourage people to kill and murder and stab and slaughter and shoot and blow up and missiles and whatnot. You can't encourage people to send their children out to die. You can't encourage people to send your women out to die intentionally with people for no reason. And with those kind of people, you can't make peace. You're not allowed to make peace. With those who want to live peacefully, who want to go to work and live with their families and live a moral life, that would be wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. The ground line is that this is the land of Israel, and this is the state of Israel, and it's a Jewish. It should be a Jewish country, and it doesn't mean that they should be missing any rights in terms of how they live here. And the whole first part of the Parsha this week talks about people who are not part of your nation, who live in your land. And it's called the Gel Toshavim. You have to treat them very, very well. And at the end of the Parsha, then it goes into the sacrifices and anything. But what's the interest? Like I said. Is that at the end of the day, we have the interpersonal relations first, and then between God and man. And I just want to read the last 3 passages in this week's parsha and finish up. Vayal Moshe lahar, Moshe went up to the mountain, vayachas anan et hahar, and the cloud covered the mountain, vayachaseu anan sheshet yamim, and the cloud covered Mount Sinai for 6 days. Vayachaseu anan sheshet yamim, vayikral Moshe, God called to Moshe, vayom hashvi, on the 7th day, mitoch hanan. And the sight of God, according to what Moses saw, was fire at the head of the mountain, in front of all of the nation of Israel. And Moshe went inside the cloud, and he went up to the mountain. And Moshe was in the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. And the question was asked, why is this so important? Why is this whole Har Sinai so important? So I think that the idea of Har Sinai, the idea of the natural revelation for the nation of Israel, is very important in the fact that we don't necessarily want to be like any other religion. We want to make sure truth is more important than anything else for us. Shabbat Shalom, Rachel. Thanks, Danny. I appreciate that. Rudy, how are you? Grace fed. When Torah in our hearts, it leads us to do what is right towards one another. So when Torah in our hearts, it not only leads us, it instructs us. Grace, I agree with you. But the idea of Har Sinai is that we have to know that it cannot come from our own mind. Morality can't, judicial system can't come from our own mind. That we can't say, well, society is going to define morality and whatever judges at that time do, and that's fine. That's not the way it works. We have to have a base morality. And that came from Har Sinai. That came from the Mount Sinai. And without that, our morality is just our comfort zone, what we decide we're comfortable with, and that is very, very dangerous. And I'm not giving my opinion on the matter, so please don't think that I am. But I said, we go by society. Remember, we were talking about, 50, 60 years ago when abortion was cold-blooded murder, no questions asked, and today it's actually a right to do so, and if you think it's not a right to do so, you're immoral. So again, without giving you my opinion on the matter, society flipped murder over to okay, and people call that advancement. All right, maybe it is. I don't know. I can't imagine a society turning murder into be okay, but maybe I don't understand. But in any case, if it's not, the base is not Har Sinai, and even between persons, between people, it'll be a problem. Because I'm going to judge you, and you're going to judge me according to our own opinions, and that doesn't work because we all have different opinions. And when it comes to colors of shirts, that's no big deal, right? The colored dress, that's, okay, we disagree, it's funny. But when it comes to real issues, when it comes to morality, and you have a different opinion than me, it's not just we disagree, are we moral? And when it comes to morality, that kind of argument can be very, very dangerous for society and the world. So I think that the source here is certainly Har Sinai, but the emphasis is put on interpersonal relations. And when it comes to the world, Western society at least, I think Western society is built on Judeo values, we call it Judeo-Christian values, but Judeo values in the essence, in the base, because Christianity came out of Judaism. But the point is that that's the Western society that's built on that. Most of the world is not built on that. If you go to around the world, India, you go to China, you go to Africa, you go to the Islamic regimes, they have a different view of morality. And the question is not who thinks they're right, but who has a base that's objective. I hope obviously, I believe in Judaism, the Torah, and I do believe that we have the base right. But again, that does not, I tell my students when they go back from Israel for the year, that if you contradict your parents, then you have not learned a thing from me. There's nothing to talk about. You're not religious. You're not religious. You cannot contradict your parents, period. You cannot insult other people, period. It doesn't matter, by the way, it doesn't matter what they're doing. It doesn't matter what they're doing. The worst of the worst in society, you can't insult them publicly unless you're trying to fix them. There's nowhere in Judaism where you're supposed to publicly insult someone. In fact, insulting someone in Judaism is comparable to murder. They say when the person turns red, it's as if you spilled the blood. So we have to be very careful, everyone, myself included. All right, so that's it, people. I'm signing off. What I'm asking everyone, two big favors. Number one, I'm in Florida. If you're around Florida, let me know. Number two, please, three favors. Number two, please share the video. Appreciate it. Let everyone, get some information about this week's Parsha. And number three, more important than anything else, I'm putting down a link right here for the Purim campaign. We spent around $20,000 last week on 2,000 Mishloach Manot. We are almost halfway there. And again, it's $18 a package, so you can do as many or as little as you want. But if you would give, and everybody on your Facebook would give, and you share it with people, and you write a little note beforehand, this is for the men and women of the IDF, the frontline soldiers on Purim who are not getting out from their service. We're going to bring Purim to them. Now, everyone would do that. Everybody. There's 17, there's 21, 18, 21 people here. If everybody does, and everybody has, 1,000 friends or 500 friends, we can get to really so many soldiers. So I'm going to put the link up here and again, share the video and join me in our efforts to say thank you to IDF soldiers. Of course, those of you who are not, those of you who do not know, I run the Standing Together organization. It's stogether.org, www.stogether.org. Check it out. Give us a like on Facebook as well. Join our efforts and say thank you to IDF soldiers. All right, let's see any questions that are here. So true, the world would be such a great place if we stuck to the laws. Well, Rachel, I think it's more than the laws if we understood them. In other words, if we really internalize them. I know it's Christian. I know it's a Christian. I believe we're living in the last days. Do you believe that's so? So Kelly, I think it's clear we're living in the days of redemption. The nation of Israel has come back to the land of Israel from all four corners of the earth. The land is blossoming. We found things in Israel that were not to be found until the times of redemption. So I think we're definitely on a good. But again, I think also that we have to do some work. I don't think that we're just waiting for God to come in and that's it. We have to do a lot of work. Nicolin, how are you? God determines morality. Absolutely. Michael, please have in mind the 9 houses in Ofra, the Shabbat. I don't want to go into that today. I know, Michael, I do, believe me. When Torah in our hearts will lead us. Okay, so that's it, people. I'm wishing everyone a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Have a Shabbat Shalom. And even if you're not Jewish, shut off the electronics. Just tell people I'm going off for 24 hours. I mean, I know better than anyone else that this can certainly take over your life. So shut it off and spend time with your family and friends, and let's try to connect up to what's important. Because during the week we're hustling and bustling. And by the way, that's one of the principles of Judaism. We say, right? With 6 days you work and you finish all your work, and then Shabbat is rest. So what do you mean you finish all your work? I didn't finish all my work. Got a lot of work to do. So it says, no, 6 days you work. When the seventh day comes, behave like you finished everything. Just go into Shabbat. Go into the weekend, disconnect from things that are really not so relevant and connect with what's really relevant. I'll finish off with a very short story. I was on a flight once and a woman asked me, again, it was not a religious woman, or I don't know if she was Jewish, she said to me, does God really care if you turn on and off lights on Shabbat? Is that what it's really all about? And it's a good question. And I said to her, listen, when the world was created, it was created with pure energy of God. The Chinese call it wuchi. And I was talking about Chinese philosophy with her. And then when man touched the world, the yin-yang, right, the black and white, that was created. Why? Because when man touched the world, evil and good was developed, because there is no evil and good without man. Evil and good was created in order for man, women, and child to choose good. So the yin-yang, the evil, the good and bad were created. And once a week, what we want to do is we want to bring the energy back to the original creation energy. So it's not about God caring about if we turn on and off a light. It's about us taking our hands off the world. It's about us saying, listen, we're not in charge. We're here. The world's here to serve us, but we're not in charge. And so once a week, we take our hands off and bring the world back to the creation energy. All right, everyone, have an awesome weekend. I am here in Florida, so Shabbat Shalom from Florida. Sending love to everyone. Hit the link, don't forget, and share the video. And I will be in Baltimore on Sunday for an amazing event. If you're around that area, let me know, and I'll give you the address. And I'll be in New York Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So if you are in the tri-state area, definitely drop me a line, give a shout out, and let's get together. Have an awesome weekend, everyone. Shabbat Shalom.